This video is solving equations by factoring. Okay, so there's a specific way to solve an equation, more specifically quadratic equations by factoring. So this is a quadratic equation because it has an x squared term. It's also an equation because it has an equal sign. So there's a couple different things that we need to understand before we even try to solve this. So in order to solve a quadratic equation, okay, so quadratic equation, the first thing you need to know is that one side has to equal 0. One side has to equal 0. So in this case, one side does equal 0, so that is okay. There will be problems where it doesn't equal 0, so I have to move this number over here. Okay, we just have to be aware of that. Now, what's the next step? Well, what happens is we need to, what we do, factor. So we factor the remaining, or let's say resulting, quadratic expression. So factor the resulting quadratic expression. What does that mean? Well, what I want to do is I want to take x squared minus 3x minus 28, and I want to write it so that it looks like this, where I have numbers inside the parentheses. If I were to FOIL or use a box or use distributive property to multiply these two sets of parentheses, I should end up with what I started with. That's the whole goal. Factoring is basically like undistributing or unfoiling. We want to work backwards, okay? There's a couple different ways you can do this. I'll go through one way, and then I'll show an easier way towards the end of the video, or towards the end of this particular problem. So what I want to do is this. I want to make an x, okay? Remember that a times c goes up top, and the number b goes in the bottom. Well, what is a, what's b, and what's c? The number in front of the x squared term is a. So the number in front is 1. This is our a. The number in front of the x term is b. And the last number, the constant at the end, is letter c. So I want to multiply them, a times c. That's negative 28. b, I'm just going to write it. And your goal is to find two magic numbers that go here that will multiply to that and add to that. So we got to think of two numbers that multiply and add. Remember, we have negatives, so we got to make sure we correctly add, correctly multiply. So the two numbers that we're going to get are negative 7 and positive 4. And you can even check my math. Those are correct, those values. So what has to happen now is I want to write them in parentheses. I want to try to put these numbers into a set of parentheses. When a is 1, which in this case a is 1, we can look at our original expression, we get a is 1. When a is 1, I'm just going to put these numbers, negative 7 and 4, into my parentheses. So x minus 7, x plus 4. When a is 1, that is what we do. We'll get to when a is other than 1 here in a little bit. So now it looks as though I have them in parentheses, which is good. That's one step down. And then your third step would then be to solve. Okay, so solve. How do I solve? There's, again, a couple things we need to know. One is that we need to understand what this actually means. So in order for two numbers, because this whole expression and this whole expression are just numbers, and I'm multiplying them. So a number times a number is equal to 0. How does that work? Well, this number has to be 0. Or this number or both have to be 0. Okay? So this could be 0, and that could be a number. This could be a number on the left-hand side, right? A number here, and this could be 0, and then I would still get 0 if I multiplied. Or 0 times 0 equals 0. Either one of those is okay. What I just did there with the zeros times 0 and all that stuff, that's called a zero product property. Basically what it's saying is if I have A times B equals 0, then A equals 0, B equals 0, or both equal 0. So if my x minus 7 is my A, x plus 4 is my B, then I get x minus 7 equals 0. Add 7, x equals 7. Then I take x plus 4 equals 0, minus 4, x equals negative 4. So my answers are 7, negative 4. The answers need to be in curly brackets. Okay, not parentheses, curly brackets. Now, it seems like a lot of work. So there is a shortcut. Okay, and here's the shortcut. Again, the first thing first, we need to make sure one side is 0. So that's a given. We always have to do that. The second thing, I'm still going to take this and I'm still going to use my x. So negative 28, negative 3. Remember my two side numbers are negative 7 and 4. In order to solve this, when a is 1, which a is 1, I'm taking these numbers and all I'm doing is flipping them. Or, remember another word for this is taking the inverse. Okay, so the opposite of negative 7, or if I flip negative 7, then I get positive 7. If I flip positive 4, then I get negative 4. And if you recall, those are the two answers from about 3 seconds ago. Okay? Those are your two solutions. Again, I need to make sure one side is 0. Because that is 0, I can directly go to my x. Remember, a times c, so that's negative 30. B is negative 1. The two side numbers are going to be negative 6 and positive 5. But in this problem, a is not 1. So here's how you do a is not 1 the proper way, and then we'll do the shortcut afterwards. Okay? So because a is not 1, here's what happens. I am going to take the 5p squared, and I'm basically making a box, and I'm going to go backwards from a box. And the negative 6 is going to go here with the variable p. The 5 is going to go here with the variable p, and the negative 6 goes here. Well, that might look confusing, but here's really what's going on. Because this is a negative 1, I'm finding two numbers that if I add them together will give me negative 1p. And those two numbers here are the two magic numbers from our x. Okay? So, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to look at what is the greatest common factor in each row and column. In this row here, I get p. That is the only thing that can come out. Everything else they don't have in common. In this row, the only thing they have in common is a positive 1. Okay, that's it. Positive 1. In this column here, I can take out a 5p. They both have 5s, they both have p's in them. And then in this column, I can take out a negative 1. So I get 5p minus 1, parentheses, p plus 1. And that is equal to 0. And then remember, I can take the 5p minus 1 equals 0, just like I did in the last problem. I solve. And now I divide. So 1/5 is one answer. Now I have to find the other. In order to do that, I'm going to take the other parentheses by my other binomial, and I'm going to solve that. Remember, I got to make it equal 0. So minus 1. So p equals negative 1. So my two answers for this particular problem are going to be 1/5, comma, negative 1. Remember, curly brackets is what we need. Now that way it looks a little complicated, and it really is. So here's the shortcut. Remember in the last problem I showed you guys a shortcut? So here's the shortcut for this particular problem. Okay, so again, we're going to make sure this is 0, so that's good. Again, I have to make an x, so that's negative 30, that's negative 1. I still get my magic numbers here. Once I get these numbers, okay, here's where the differing things really happens. It really is the same, but I didn't discuss it on the last one. So when a is not 1, which in this case it is 5, what I have to do is I'm going to take the magic numbers and I'm going to flip them. Remember, we did that in the last one. I talked about flipping or the inverse. Okay, so when I flip both of them, I get positive 6 and negative 5. Then what I have to do is take both of the numbers and divide by a. Well, in this case, a is 5. So I take both of these numbers and I divide them by 5. So 6 divided by 5, negative 5 divided by 5, and that's negative 1 when I reduce. So my answer is 6/5, comma, negative 1. And those are my two answers for this problem. And they should be the same as what it was when I did it the really long way. All right, let's do some more examples. And we'll kind of go through the shortcut now instead of taking the time to go through the proper way. So let's look at this one. This one here, I have an A, I have a B, but I don't have a C. So that means C is 0. So when I make my X, I get 0 and negative 8. So what two numbers will multiply to 0 but add to negative 8? Well, that's negative 8 and 0. They add to negative 8, but they multiply to 0. Those are the only two numbers you could get. So then my magic numbers are here. What I do is I flip them, 8, comma, 0. I can't flip 0. 0 is already 0. I can't take a negative of it. And then remember, I have to divide by a. And what do I get? 8/3, comma, 0. In my curly bracket. Let's work on this one, and then we'll do some others that you guys can work on yourself as practice. So this one here, I have to make this side 0 by adding 7 to both sides. So that gives me 3x squared plus 10x minus 8 equals 0. I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to make my x. Remember, a times c goes up top, so negative 24. 10 goes in the bottom. And I need to find two numbers that multiply to negative 24 and add to 10. That's negative 2 and positive 12. Those are the only two numbers that will work. So what happens now? Well, my magic numbers are negative 2 and 12. Remember, I have to flip them, 2, comma, negative 12. And then I have to divide by a. When I divide, I have to reduce if I can. So that's -4. So those are my answers for this particular problem. So I'm going to put a couple problems on the board. I want you guys to work on them. Pause the video at these moments and then wait for the answer to make sure you're right. Okay, so again I need to make this side 0, so I have to add 8. So I get 2x squared plus 3x minus 9 equals 0. Make my x -18, 3. And I need to find two numbers that, again, my magic numbers. So that gives me 6 and -3. Then I take my magic numbers and I flip them. -6 and +3. Then I have to divide by my a value. So that's -3, comma, 3/2. So here's another example. Again, pause the video and work on this example, and I'll go over the answer and how to do it. So here we go. I have -2 to both sides. So I get n squared plus n minus 20 equals 0. Again, make an x. I get -20 up top because I have to multiply a times c. I get +1 in the bottom. Then my two numbers are 5 and -4. Again, I have to flip them. Now remember, the rule was if a was 1, which it is, then that's my answer. But in case you forgot, guess what? The same thing happens. I can just divide it by a. Flip and divide, flip and divide. That's all you're doing. So therefore, that is the solution to that example. So that wraps up this video, solving equations by factoring.